The clock on the wall ticked softly as steam curled from a porcelain kettle. Grace Holloway moved with ritualistic calm, each movement measured, each sound absorbed into the hush of the late afternoon. She poured the hot water into the teapot, placed 2 cups on the tray, and carried it all to the small table by the window. Outside, the garden shivered under the autumn wind. She sat down, folded her hands in her lap, and waited. The front door opened with a dull clunk. Heavy footsteps. Harold appeared in the doorway, shrugging off his coat without looking at her. "It's cold," he muttered, heading straight for the hallway. "I made tea," she said quietly. "I'm not in the mood," came the reply. She blinked once. "It's 4 o'clock. He stopped in the doorway, back still to her. "Grace, do you ever think of doing something else? Anything else?" The question floated in the room like dust. She reached for the teapot and began to pour. The tea made a soft splash. Harold turned. "This life, it's like being buried alive. Same garden, same cups, same silence." She stirred her tea gently. "I like silence." He shook his head, then left the room. A door closed upstairs. Grace sat alone. Her fingers curved around the warm china cup, holding it close to her chest. Her gaze drifted to the rose bushes just beyond the window. A petal trembled loose, floating downward in the wind. She lifted the cup and took a slow sip, the kind that warms more than just the throat. Outside, the garden swayed. Inside, everything held still. Dinner was chicken, slightly overcooked. Grace carved hers carefully, bite by bite, while Harold barely touched the food. The clink of silverware was the only conversation. Across the table, he shifted in his seat. "I've made a decision." She paused mid-cut, eyes lifting. "About?" He didn't meet her gaze. "Us. I'm leaving, Grace." The silence that followed wasn't sharp. It was soft, like cotton in the throat. She put down her fork. "Where will you go?" "I've rented a place downtown. It's just..." He exhaled, impatient. "You've stopped moving, Grace. You're stuck in time, and I don't want to be stuck anymore." "I see." He flinched, as if expecting a reaction she didn't give. "You don't get angry. You don't fight. It's like I'm talking to wallpaper." Grace folded her napkin slowly. "Wallpaper can be comforting." "That's exactly the problem." A long pause. Then he stood, pushing his chair back with a grating scrape. "I'll come by tomorrow for the rest of my things." She nodded once, then rose and carried her plate to the sink. No tears, no trembling. Later, she returned to the parlor. The tea things from earlier still rested on the tray. She sat again at the window table, pouring herself a second cup. The tea was lukewarm now, but she didn't mind. She wrapped both hands around the cup. Her wedding ring clinked softly against the porcelain. She watched the steam curl upward, a ghost of something once warm. A small sound caught her attention. The front door closing. His footsteps were gone. She didn't move. Only after the quiet had settled in like dust did she take another sip, eyes distant, breath steady. The wind outside rattled the window panes. Inside, everything was still again. Saturday brought a breeze that tugged gently at the curtains. Grace opened the window just enough to let it in. She set the table for tea, 2 cups this time, deliberately arranged. At 4:03, the front gate creaked. "Hi, Grandma," came Lily's voice, bright but hesitant. Grace smiled. "Right on time." Lily, 17 and all elbows and headphones, dropped her backpack near the door and slid into the chair opposite. She glanced around the room, her eyes resting on the polished teapot, the sugar bowl shaped like a rose. "Smells like the garden in here," she said. "It's the lavender blend today." Lily added 2 cubes of sugar. "Mom said you and Grandpa split." Grace nodded. "He left. Because of the tea?" Lily asked, only half joking. Grace let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "Among other things." They drank in quiet for a while. Then Lily looked toward the wooden cabinet in the corner, its glass doors revealing a collection of tiny jars and worn labels. "What's all that stuff?" Grace followed her gaze. "Old things, creams, oils. I used to make them. For real." Lily leaned forward. "Like, actually make them." Grace gave a small smile. "From flowers, herbs. I had a garden for each purpose." "That's kind of witchy cool," Lily said. "Why'd you stop?" Grace stirred her tea, eyes lowered. Life got in the way. Lily got up, walking over to inspect the jars. She held one up, rose petals suspended in oil. "These look ancient. Do they still work?" "Some things don't lose their strength," Grace said softly. Lily turned back to her grandmother. "You should totally sell this stuff, or post about it. People eat this up." Grace shook her head gently. "The world has moved on." But Lily smiled. "Not if I bring it back." The next afternoon, as the kettle hissed on the stove, the doorbell rang twice. Quick, familiar. Grace opened the door to find Marge, her cardigan dotted with flour, clutching a still warm loaf of banana bread. "Afternoon, Gracie," she said, breezing past like always. "Brought you something. Smells like morning in here." Grace arched an eyebrow. "It's lavender." "Exactly." Marge plopped onto the couch, setting the bread on the table. "Heard Harold's gone. That true?" Grace nodded, unbothered. "He left Wednesday." "Well," Marge said, slicing into the loaf without waiting, "maybe that's a blessing in beige clothing." Grace poured 2 cups of tea. "You always had a way with comfort." "I do try." Marge sipped and winced. "Still too proper for my tongue, but I suppose it's good for the soul." They sat in comfortable tension, the quiet between them filled with clinking china and idle chewing. "Oh," Marge said suddenly. "Did you hear about that company? What's it called? Bloom. Sold last week for some obscene number. Something like 80 million. Grace froze for just a second. "Bloom?" "Yeah, natural cosmetics. They had this whole campaign, beauty that begins in the garden." "Sound familiar?" Marge looked at her with narrowed eyes, half joking, half nosy. Grace's fingers tightened around her cup. "A little." Marge leaned forward. "They say it started with 2 women back in the day. Homemade stuff. Real small-town beginning." Grace said nothing, her eyes distant. "You okay, hun?" "I'm fine." But she wasn't. The name Bloom stirred something deep, something half-buried in soil and memory. She hadn't thought of Evelyn in years, or of the rose oils, or of the deal they made, or didn't. Marge finished her tea. "You ever think of doing something again, Grace?" Grace answered with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Sometimes." Rain pattered against the window panes the next day, soft and rhythmic. Grace stood in front of the cabinet, fingers brushing along the labels of her old jars. She pulled one down, rosehip and chamomile, and held it to the light. The oil inside caught a faded golden hue. Behind her, Lily's voice broke the silence. "You okay?" Grace turned, jar still in hand. "Do you want to hear a story?" Lily dropped onto the couch. "Always." Grace sat beside her, setting the jar between them. "When I was about your age, maybe a little older, I started experimenting with plants, oils, teas, balms. I had a friend, Evelyn. She was bold, brilliant. We dreamed of building something together, something beautiful." Lily listened closely, eyes wide. "That sounds epic." "It was small at first," Grace continued. "We made creams for the women in town. Everything from dry hands to sleepless nights. We called it Bloom." Lily blinked. "Wait, like that Bloom?" Grace nodded slowly. "No way, you started that?" "We started it," Grace said. "But then I married your grandfather. We moved. I left it behind, handed it all to Evelyn. It was meant to be temporary." "But you never went back?" "No," Grace said softly. Life filled up. Harold didn't think much of kitchen hobbies, and Evelyn, she kept going. Lily stared at her. So you're part of that brand's origin? You helped create it? Grace nodded again, a sad smile tracing her lips. Why didn't you tell anyone? I didn't think it mattered anymore. Lily picked up the jar between them. I think it matters a lot. They sat quietly, the scent of rosehip and rain mingling in the room. Grace looked at her granddaughter and saw something stir. Curiosity, pride, maybe even legacy. The next afternoon, Grace found herself in the garden again, pruning the old rose bushes she hadn't touched in months. Her hands moved almost mechanically, as if guided by the memories of Evelyn's laughter. The shared hours spent picking petals, mixing oils, testing formulas. Lily appeared at the door, holding her phone up. You need to see this. Grace raised an eyebrow, setting the pruners down and wiping her hands on her apron. What is it? Lily handed her the phone, pointing to the screen. Bloom Cosmetics. They just hit the news again. Huge endorsement deal with a model. Grace frowned, eyes narrowing. The screen flashed images of the Bloom products, glossy, professional, immaculate. It was nothing like what they had started, but the name, it lingered in her mind, a ghost she couldn't shake off. Lily continued scrolling through the post. They're selling like crazy. The brand's everywhere now. People love it. Grace looked at her granddaughter, her thoughts clouding. Do they even know? Lily's eyes softened. Do they care? Grace didn't answer right away. She set the phone down on the stone bench beside her and looked back at the garden, where the roses, despite the neglect, bloomed once more. There was something beautiful in that, something she couldn't ignore anymore. Maybe it's time to stop hiding, Grace said quietly, more to herself than to Lily. What do you mean? Grace turned to face her. I mean, maybe it's time to make something again. Maybe it's time to stop pretending I'm done. Lily's face lit up. You're going to do it, aren't you? I don't know yet, Grace replied, eyes fixed on the garden's edge, but I think I've kept enough secrets. Lily grinned, pulling her phone back. Well, when you do, you better let me help. Grace smiled softly. We'll see. But first, it's time for tea. The rain had stopped, leaving the garden smelling fresh and damp. Grace sat at the small wooden table in the kitchen, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea. Lily had gone home for the evening, leaving Grace to her thoughts. She stared at the empty chair across from her, the one where Harold used to sit, but now it felt hollow. Then the phone rang. Grace glanced at the screen. It was an unknown number. She hesitated, but something, an instinct, urged her to answer. Hello? Grace's voice was steady but curious. Grace, it's Evelyn. For a moment, Grace couldn't breathe. Evelyn's voice, after so many years, felt like an echo from another life. Evelyn, Grace whispered, unable to hide the surprise in her tone. Yes, it's me. I've been meaning to call for months, but I didn't know how. Grace sat up straighter, her heart suddenly racing. Why now? Evelyn's voice was cautious, almost fragile. I heard about what happened with Harold. I'm sorry, Grace. I know it's been a long time, but I think it's time we talked. Grace closed her eyes, memories flooding back. Evelyn had been the wild one, the dreamer. Grace had been practical, the one who kept them grounded. Together, they had created Bloom, a company born from love, creativity, and a shared vision of beauty. I never meant to leave you behind, Evelyn continued, but I think I owe you an apology. I never told you the whole truth. Grace's heart twisted. What truth? The truth about Bloom. Grace, you're still a co-founder. Legally, half of everything belongs to you. Grace's breath caught. What? How? I didn't want to burden you, but when I sold the company, I made sure you were still part of it. It's yours too. You just need to claim it. A silence stretched between them. Grace's hands trembled slightly around the cup. The words felt surreal, too big to take in all at once. Evelyn, Grace finally whispered, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, just think about it. The call ended softly, and Grace sat in the quiet, her mind racing with possibilities. The roses outside swayed in the evening breeze, their petals glistening with rain. The next morning, Grace sat in the same chair she'd occupied for years, but today it felt different. The phone call with Evelyn lingered in her mind, a mix of hope and disbelief swirling inside her. As she sipped her tea, the doorbell rang. A quick, almost hesitant ring. Grace didn't need to guess who it was. She opened the door to find Harold standing on the other side, his coat collar turned up against the crisp air. His face was worn, the lines deeper than she remembered, but his eyes, those same tired eyes, were familiar. Grace, he said, his voice tight. Can we talk? She stepped aside without a word, silently leading him into the parlor. The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken history and broken things. He sat down in the same chair he used to occupy, but this time it felt colder. I've been thinking about everything, about us, about you. Grace sat across from him, her hands resting calmly on her lap. She said nothing. The air between them was thick with expectation. I was wrong, Harold continued, his voice softer now. I didn't give you a chance to grow, to... Don't, Grace interrupted, her voice steady. You left. You made your choice. Harold hesitated, then leaned forward, his eyes intense. I didn't know what I was leaving behind. Grace, I thought I wanted more. But now, looking at you, I see what I've thrown away. She met his gaze with an unreadable expression. It's too late. He reached for her hand, his grip tentative. I'm sorry. I should have seen what you were capable of. You're still capable of so much. Grace pulled her hand away, standing up. I don't need your apology. I'm not the same person you left. I'm different now. The words stung, but they felt like a release. She didn't need his validation anymore. I'm starting something new, Grace said quietly, and you're not part of it. Harold sat back, his face pale. Grace. I'm not waiting for anyone, she said, her voice calm but firm. Not anymore. She turned toward the door, her back to him. Goodbye, Harold. The door clicked shut behind him. The soft light of afternoon filtered through the kitchen window, casting a golden glow over the newly set table. Grace had spent the morning picking fresh flowers, dahlias, lavender, roses, and arranging them in crystal vases. The table gleamed, a fresh set of china gleaming softly under the light, all carefully chosen. It was different now, a place for creation, not just memories. Lily and Marge had arrived early, both eager to help, and now they sat, sipping tea from mismatched cups, their laughter filling the space between them. It was the first time in months that Grace had felt something like joy rising in her chest again, something pure, something unburdened. So, what's next? Marge asked, her lips curled around a piece of banana bread. When do we start selling these magical lotions of yours? Grace set her cup down and smiled. Soon. I've been thinking. A new brand, not just a name, but something real, something personal. Lily raised her eyebrows. Like Bloom, but better. Grace nodded. Bloom was Evelyn's dream, but this is mine. I'm calling it the Garden of Grace. Marge clapped her hands together. I like it. It's got class. Grace glanced around the room, the newly arranged flowers a testament to her new beginning. It's about time I claimed it. The garden, the oils, the beauty in all of it. It's mine, and I'm not hiding anymore. Lily leaned forward, her excitement contagious. You're going to build something incredible. People will love it. "I hope so," Grace said, her voice quiet, but her heart beat with certainty. "But it's more than just products. It's a legacy, something that carries who I am and who we are." They clinked their teacups together, their smiles wide, as if the future had already begun. The room, filled with light and laughter, felt alive. It was the beginning of something new, something full of promise and growth. The studio was small but warm. Grace had set up her camera by the window, the soft afternoon light spilling across the wooden table. The teapot sat in front of her, steam rising gently from the spout. Her hands were steady, deliberate, as she poured the hot water into a delicate glass teacup, the liquid swirling inside. Lily had helped her set up, adjusting the lighting, but now she was out of sight, waiting with bated breath in the hallway. Grace took a deep breath, her fingers wrapping around the cup as she sat back, her face soft but sure. The camera's light blinked on, and Grace's voice, calm and steady, filled the quiet room. "Some flowers only bloom after the winter," she said, her words gentle, deliberate. "Sometimes we do too." She lifted the cup to her lips, her eyes closing slightly as she took a slow, thoughtful sip. The sound of the porcelain tilting echoed, almost like a soft promise. For a moment, she just sat there, the warmth of the tea filling her, the weight of her journey settling comfortably in her chest. Her fingers brushed lightly against the side of the cup, the perfect blend of strength and grace in each movement. Grace smiled, her eyes turning toward the garden outside the window, where the roses she had planted were blooming once more. It wasn't just the flowers that had found their rebirth, it was her. The last chapter of her life was done, but the next one was just beginning. She placed the cup gently down, the faintest clink of the china like a closing note. The screen faded to black, leaving only the quiet echo of a life reborn. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. I'd love to hear what you think, so leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts on the story. Your feedback means a lot to me, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for watching.